Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited for our conversation. If you could just start with your name, company, brief insight into what you do, and where you got to where you are today.
Sure. So my name is Evan Morgan. I'm the founder of Cyber Defense Army. We're a cybersecurity consultancy and managed services company. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. Started my career in the Air Force, in the U.S. military, and then was in financial services, federal government, consulting, various industries after that in cyber. That's been my career journey.
Cool. Love that. We can just jump right into our first question, which is more fun. If cybersecurity were a movie genre, what would it be and why would you choose that?
I think it's easy to say that every day feels like a horror film. I think horror is a fair one, but I'm a more positive, but I think that some of the coolest moments I've had in cyber have been during incident and investigations, trying to figure out like the whodunit type moments and like what actually happened, things like that. So I think there's a little mystery. Cyber depends on what you do for a living. You know, if you're working in risk, you're doing some investigations. But if you work in IR, you're responding to incidents and trying to patch vulnerabilities before they get exploited and things like that. So it's kind of different depending on what part of cyber you're in. But any of those I think could fit depending on those roles.
No, yeah, that's a good one. I've never heard that before, but it is so subjective, I feel like, based on, your function, what you do day to day. But when you word it like that, it almost seems fun because I love a good murder mystery, at least. That's my favorite genre. So I love it. Okay, our third one. And, this is pulling from your expertise in the industry and all you've done, a lot of the things you've seen in current conversations you're having now. What are the three biggest challenges you see security leaders facing today, whether it's, operation-wise, leadership-wise, kind of how things are shifting? Like, what are the biggest challenges people are facing today, and how are you advising and kind of leading the charge on that and suggesting things to them to better organizations?
That's a really great question, too. I would say one that still exists and I think will exist for a fair amount of time into the future, unless some interesting technologies that are kind of coming out really change things, but just the overload of alerting, right? Like we don't need more detection tools. We need more tools to actually remediate the things that we're detecting. So I think that's definitely one for almost every cyber leader. And if you have that solved, you're in a very much the 1% category. I've been part of organizations that had no handle on it whatsoever, and then I've had ones that were extremely well handled, and everything in between. So it really depends on leadership, the investment, and really the rigor you apply to your program. But I think that second one, the piece I mentioned there, investment, I think that's been a challenge for cyber folks too for a long time, right? Before there wasn't as much need for cyber protections regulatory wise, right? That usually drives a lot of the change. But I think that with a lot of the changes that we've seen regulatory wise and a lot of the transformations we've seen in a lot of large organizations over the past decade or two, I think that the ability for folks to get the funding they need for new emerging threats is becoming harder and harder, right? It's not just you're protecting your data center where all of your apps live and all of your users live in your office and everything's good. Now there's an explosion of SaaS applications, right? And how do we control SaaS applications and protect all of those? And all of our sensitive data is going there too, right? So I think that's also another issue is staffing and funding and things like that. And then I'd say lastly, and this is also kind of feels like honestly the three things that I'm highlighting that are issues today, unknowingly at first, are also issues that we've been dealing with for a long time. But my third one was the evolution of our industry, right? So the evolving threats we do have, new technologies with generative AI, that even though AI has been around for 2+ decades with scripting and whatnot, generative AI brings some definitely interesting new threats to the table. I think that it seems like every couple of years in cyber, in tech in general, some new innovation will come out that will fundamentally change a lot. And then it's like we're scrambling for a few years to catch up. Then most of the organization or most of the industry gets it behind us. And then there's some outliers there. But you saw the same thing with like mobile, with SaaS applications in general, within cloud providers. It's just kind of like the same thing every few years. This just like fundamental shift of an innovative technology that really is just spin everything around again and try to figure out how to make it all work. The puzzle thing we're just building.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think that kind of segues us into our last question, which is something that everybody's talking about. Not many people have answers, and I think it's creating a lot of fear, that uncertainty of how do we get a handle on this, and how do we tackle things when we don't even know what we don't even know. And so, like you mentioned, AI has been around for decades. The generative AI part that we see where security is concerned, at least when we talk about, SaaS and how we're using, third-party apps, these integrations, employees are integrating these shadow AI tools that we don't know what they're storing, what they're accessing, also talking about using LLMs. Like if you input company data into an LLM, where is it going? Is it really getting spit back out? Is it just a black box and we'll never see it again? So from the conversations I'm having, it's a huge subject. My question to you is, what do you see as the most significant challenge security leaders are facing when it comes to integrating AI, educating employees on the use of AI, making sure that there's proper AI guardrails in place? And then also the second half of that is, how do we encourage leaders and security leaders and professionals to lean into AI rather than shy away from it?
We talk about 10x engineers in the tech industry a lot, and I have not seen too many technologies that can help 10x your 1x players more than generative AI, to be honest. And, I'm one that is going to say 51-49 positive to negative on generative AI. Right? Like I know there's a lot of different views on the value and the quality and all those things. It's just like all technology. We're going to continue to get better and better and better at it, right? Yeah. So I think for the first part of your question, like how do we actually kind of solve for some of that? I think that you outlined it in a way that it's kind of walking it through my mind. Like the companies have to manage this from a risk perspective, right? Like it's not just, it is another tool, but if you're using it like another tool, you're not understanding it well enough to know the risks that you're exposing yourself, either an organization to. So I think that managing it from what is allowed versus not allowed is super important, especially if you're a regulated industry and you have regulated data sets like banking and healthcare and things like that. There are some really cool technologies that are coming out. I'm actually an advisor for one of them, where they're actually leveraging custom-built LLMs that they've made that actually filter out sensitive data based on what you're trying to push into an LLM. So it's basically protecting you with an LLM from public LLM type thing. Yeah. But it's a really, really cool technology, and it makes it so that you can embrace more usage of these tools, even if they're the public ones that potentially train on your data, because you're not putting anything that's sensitive in there. Salary ranges, PII, all, like HR data, like all those types of things that you'd be concerned that someone's putting in to then get an answer back. But then there's a lot of technical controls to it too, right? Like AI is a new thing, but there's also the black box of it, which is, I don't really even understand how this thing works. How do I control it, right? And I think we're in that phase for most folks in the industry. If you're a tinkerer and you like working with these things, you've kind of figured out some of that, but then most folks probably aren't doing that. They're just hearing from the Gartners, the Forresters, not to pick on them, but like the news outlets of the industry that say there's a concern here, you need to be worried about this, you need to solve this. But I think that's not necessarily the best, because you don't give people the way to how do you solve that, right? And that's where we approach the policy side of things with risk and legal. We approach it from a technology standpoint, and then the actual operational process around how do you protect the organization while leveraging those technologies.
Following up with what you just said is, how would you encourage or bring up the conversation to these security leaders on how to, start properly educating their teams? How do you approach the subject? And, assuming that your employees don't really know anything about AI, maybe know what ChatGPT is, that's the only thing they think of when they think AI. How do you kind of educate them on what is AI? How are we using it? How to be safe? Take a CISO, they have so many things to worry about. What are the key fundamental things that they need to be thinking about when they're approaching it with their employees?
Great question there. Like as far as like usage of it, if you're not putting sensitive data sets in there, there's really no fear. Or like if this is the thing, like everybody's fearful of, okay, train on my data. Okay, like if you're just giving it some things that you want it to give you a response on, is there anything sensitive in there? Well, no. Why do you care? Google's been trained on your data for years, y'all. Same as Micro. Like, the funny thing is, like, we're always there's this outrage, but people have been doing the same thing forever. So I don't know. I just find that funny. but it's kind of like the saying, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, or I speak in metaphors, like another metaphor or analogy here is Paul Bunyan and the Big Blue Ox. All right, like I know I'm dating myself here if you're like, what is that? But it's a childhood story, but it was like Paul Bunyan with big old Paul Bunyan, big old country boy with his big blue ox, and they would chop down all the trees, and that's how they chop down the trees, right? He could chop down more trees than anybody else. And then lo and behold, there was the gas-powered chainsaw that came up. And there's this little twerp that's, no offense to anybody who's short, there's this little twerp with a giant chainsaw, and he's out there doing his thing. And lo and behold, he just barely beats Paul Bunyan. And it's like, oh, lo and behold, look, poor Paul Bunyan, he lost the battle. It's like, it's called evolution. It's called innovation.
Yeah.
Like, you can't fight it. Don't fight generative AI. So all the security leaders out there that go, it's bad, don't use it, you're in the wrong field, y'all. Like, you need to go work for the federal government in cyber. Because if you just want to say no, that's where you go. If you want to be in the industry, embrace technologies, but do them in a smart way so you protect yourselves while still getting the value out of these technologies.
Yeah, no, I love that story. And it reminds me of a conversation I just had for one of our Q&As where, we were talking and our guest said, we want to have a yes and, or yes but, or yes however approach. Like, we don't want to say no and completely, hinder our employees from trying out these tools and making their own productivity better and, experimenting with what they need to, but we need to put the controls in place so that they're not going haywire and they're not doing things that are going to put the organization at risk, expose sensitive company data, accidentally and inadvertently exfiltrate data. Like, it's all about how you word it to them and make them understand that, you can do this, but make sure when you're using these LLMs, don't do X, Y, Z.
Bingo. Yeah, to use that analogy, one last little story came to mind when you were talking. It was back in the day. It wasn't yes, but it was no but. We would do no, but I remember I had a CISO boss that was, no one's going to use no. It's going to be no, but if we give a project a response on like what they can or can't do with cyber. And that was fundamentally like a different approach than what that group is used to. And it was perfect example is cyber engineers will know Telnet. You don't use Telnet, right? It's all in clear text. Anything you put in there, anybody sniffing the wire is going to see everything that you're putting in there, passwords, all that stuff. It's bad, right? Don't use Telnet to connect systems. Use SSH. Right? It's the exact same thing. It's just encrypted tunnel. It's the same idea with LLMs or generative AI in general. It's not that you don't use it. You don't say, no, you can't use that. Good luck. People are going to find ways around you. Like, you're not infallible as a cyber person. But if you say, hey, no, you can't do it that way, but here are ways that you can do it, and you become a provider of solutions versus a blocker of solutions, the business starts to open their arms up a lot more to cyber pros like that.
Yeah. So this is kind of just a question that came to me while you were talking. In terms of AI in the sense of, third-party applications that employees want to integrate within their SaaS environment, whether it's something to help them book meetings or something to help them do notes or anything that they think is going to, excel their productivity. What would you say or what would you recommend in terms of putting guardrails around those kinds of apps and what you think the security risks associated with that are? Like, if these employees, obviously most of them are just negligent, they don't really mean to cause harm, but in integrating these apps, they might be bringing in risks and expanding the attack surface, whether they mean to or not. So what do you kind of think about that, and what's your stance on the third-party tools of it?
I think that we are living in a world of amazing third-party tools that we have never lived in before. It gets better and better every year. I think that also from a cyber standpoint, there can be plenty of people that will say that we are in the riskiest realm of time in our journey as well, right? Because of the fact that SaaS is a collection of these islands everywhere that you're ultimately potentially going to and getting data. What lives there? How do you protect that? How do you protect that from other apps that it's talking to, other integrations? SaaS has made it extremely easy to do integrations where what used to take potentially weeks or months with IT projects in these large organizations to set up VPN tunnels between third parties, where it's like, hey, there's a job that sends them data or they send us data, and that's really all that is there. There's no end user interactivity with it. Now we've taken the same idea and said, hey, we're going to push stuff up to the SaaS app, and then anybody can access it from anywhere, including grandma's PC or down the street at Starbucks on their personal laptop, unless you put controls in place. And it's like, that's okay. Like, we did just spend millions of dollars building a program to protect from doing that, right? But now it's okay because someone sold me a product that allows me to do that. So that's really the transition that we've had as a tech industry, as a planet, on how we use these things. But I think just like in anything with cyber, the new risks come out, and then companies like Do Control come out too, and then go, how do we solve for these new problems, these new risks? And that's where I see things like the SSPM tool, CASB to a degree, if we're talking about CASB technologies. I'm not a huge fan of CASB. I think there's ways to solve it in other ways with SSPMs, and then your traditional on-prem technologies. But yeah, like that's the way I see solving that space. Is it used to be CASB, and then you build a bunch of stuff around it. And then as SSPM started to become a category, it became really easy to say, look, I'm going to onboard all my SaaS apps, or at least all the ones that I can, and then I'm just going to managing these as different entities or different environments that ultimately need to be protected in the same way as the mothership, right? Like if I'm protecting on-prem, if I'm a big organization, I'm protecting on-prem, I should protect my most sensitive thing, the data, at these other places just as much, right? So I think that's the biggest gap for folks is they go, oh, I contractually shift it all out to a third party with our contract. But in reality, I'm still liable for all the things if they lose my data, right?
Yeah. Well, I love it. I know that was kind of off what we had planned, but I think for me, that's something that I'm constantly writing about, constantly researching and getting feedback on, because it is so new. And I think, at least for the space we're in, it just interests me so much, and I feel like getting your expertise is great on that. So thank you for that. And I think we're at time, and we went through all of our questions. So thank you so much again for sharing with us today. I'm so excited for our audience to see. I feel like you had a lot of takes that were very broad, coming from a lot of different perspectives in the conversations you've had throughout your career. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.